Common signs to watch for. Let's break it down. Physical signs, cognitive signs, and emotional signs.
And those moments are just magnified because mom is not who she used to be, or dad's showing some signs. And I know I work too, and we have to make time for our parents at those moments.
The next step is having a conversation
Right.
with your loved one.
And let that physician explain to your mom and dad why it is going to be better to have 24-hour care.
You always know that there's certain family members in the family that those grandparents may respond better to.
She said, "Hey, I'm just calling to remind you I called you. But more than anything, I just really thought I could talk to you." Boy, that got me. I thought, well, I'm going to get up first thing in the morning and make sure I call her. Around the Table with Vickie. Just like gathering around the dinner table with loved ones and friends, we're here to share stories, insight, and inspiration.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Around the Table with Vickie. I'm your co-host, Chris Runk, and to my right, as always, the star of the show, my mother, Vickie Runk.
Hello.
And just thank everybody for listening.
I know, it's
Thanks
been so good.
for going on this journey with us. And, as we're going into the new year now, first off, happy holidays. Hope everybody had a great New Year's.
Merry Christmas. Yes, we had a great time. It was busy, as usual, in the Runk house, but the Lord blessed us with some downtime and had a great time just sitting still and remembering what Christmas is all about, the birth of our King, and just celebrating each other. It was really rushed this year. We didn't even really know Christmas was the date that it was till we woke up on 2 days before Christmas and decided that we had to take a trip to North Carolina to do a little shopping.
I'm about to say, some of us did some last minute
Yeah.
Christmas shopping.
You guys didn't believe me because I usually have some things in my back pocket, but then I think you realized that I really did need to go shopping this year. Yeah.
Well, that was good for all of us. Well, I think we all were a little behind, so
Yeah.
I appreciate it too.
Yeah, so we do appreciate everybody joining in, and it's so good to go throughout the community and actually know that several of you are engaging with our show and actually find it informative, and we can tell on some of our emails that we're getting in through our websites that it's making a difference, which that is exactly what all this is about, is informing and giving correct information, which we're going to talk a lot about today.
And speaking of that, we do love to hear from listeners. So if there's ever a topic that you would love for us to discuss, head on over to VickieTalk.com, and there you can write into the info account, get to us. You can also see all of our other episodes. And for those who are listening on radio and maybe still haven't heard, we do film this. So you can actually watch our podcast live on, you can head to VickieTalk.com, but also on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube if you just search Around the Table with Vickie.
Please do.
Yes, we would appreciate it. Like, subscribe, hit that follow button, all the above. We'll appreciate it. But today, Mom, we're going to continue. We've touched on the topic a little bit throughout the past episodes, but we're going to talk about, especially coming off the holidays now. We've spent some time with loved ones, and maybe we've noticed that they've had some struggles, some cognitive impairments, or maybe they're not quite walking as fast as they used to. And maybe what are those signs coming off the holidays, spending time with loved ones, that maybe they should, you start worrying about mom, dad, your grandma, grandpa, about needing placement.
Yeah. So it's funny because over the last 2 weeks, I have been, totally ingrained with a lot of emails and a lot of calls and a lot of this very subject, which I love to talk about, because if we can get there in time, we're going to prevent a fall. We're going to prevent a catastrophe. We're going to prevent someone wandering away from their house and involving the police and all the things that go into that. So I really am excited to talk about these items today. Over the weekends, over the last couple of weeks, we have done some emergency placements from this very topic of children coming in, adult children, and spending time with mom and dad. And those moments are just magnified because mom is not who she used to be or dad's showing some signs. And so I would encourage all of our listeners and viewers, don't ignore those signs. Those are moments that you really need to catalog in your mind. I suggest that you take a tablet and you write down, on this day I came in and found no groceries in the refrigerator. And that's not typical of my mom and dad. They were very confused as to time and date. They were, the car was left outside when they normally bring it into the garage. And you say, oh, that's simple for someone older. You cannot discount those moments, because if it's out of character for mom or dad or both, then that's something that we as adult children need to pay attention to. Now, that does not mean that you need to run to a care facility and sign them up immediately and take all of their independence away. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not even a proponent of that. Let's start making time for them then to make sure that those cognitive skills and those moments that they're lapsing do not become worse and speed up like a hurricane and hit you in the middle of the head one day, and you're like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Then you remember all of those moments that you should have been preparing. Those are the moments that you need to get online and you need to research, what are my options here? Should I start with just 2 days a week of home health to where I have somebody at least coming in and checking on them? And then you stay in touch with the home health agency to make sure that the signs and the signals are not getting worse. Or should I put them in an adult daycare? To where 2 days a week they're socializing with others. And sometimes when you do that, those cognitive issues start to improve. Because a lot of times cognitive issues are caused because someone's spending a great deal of time alone.
Well, let me stop you right there. Common signs to watch for. Let's break it down. Physical signs, cognitive signs, and emotional signs. So let's start on physical. What are some of those things that...
Well, I mean, if you've got a mom that's used to getting dressed every day and putting her makeup on and having those clothes just perfect, and you come in and find her disheveled, maybe one day it's okay. We can excuse that because all of us have a bad day. I mean, there's days I don't want to get up and get ready. I certainly am not going downhill yet, but I may be one day. And so those are some, oh, mom, or she doesn't have the same cleanliness about her. You've noticed that her nails are not kept, and she hasn't maybe kept up with some of her prescriptions the way she should, and things like that, to her facials or to her nail appointments. And you've just noticed that she's just not taking care of herself. Same thing with the dad. You notice that he's not shaven like he used to, or his clothes are torn, or their clothes are dirty, and they're wearing them every day, and they're just not going and having them laundered. So those are some physical signs. Or they're just shuffling a little bit more when they're walking. They seem unkept. They don't seem themselves.
You mentioned him. I love your idea about it. Writing down those moments, because I know there's people that look back. That's not a big deal right now.
Right.
That she just had a bad day, or there's.
Well, we don't want to accept that our parents are having these moments. They're not glimmer moments. Glimmer moments are those moments that you want to always remember and hold on to. So they're not happy moments to us. It puts reality in front of us. And when we're forced to face that ourselves about the mortality of our parents, it's painful.
Mm-hmm. But it's really, I think it's important whenever people do look back and things were to get worse. Let's just say you're a year and a half, 2 years down that road. You almost can look right back and you'd be like, that moment, I kind of knew something was wrong, but I just put it off.
Right.
And you can almost pinpoint those exact moments.
And it's a timeline that you can keep for yourselves. And then as things start to progress physically, I would highly recommend that you get them in with the general practitioner as soon as possible, because this needs to get in a physician's hands. And we need to get consultation from people, great doctors like Dr. Peter Betts and others in the community that can help with some of the cognitive diagnoses. And once we understand what is going on with mom and dad physically and cognitively, then we are so much better equipped to help them. And then we go into the portion that you talked about emotionally. And that can also fall back to a Dr. Betts or a general practitioner to look at depression. And to look at those anxiety moments that all of this brings together as one big full circle. And then we as family members play a really big part and filling some of those holes in those residents' lives that are signifying that we need to be more connected with them. We need to pay attention to the depression. And I think winter months are so hard on seniors because the sunshine's not out every day and it's
I
cold.
personally think winter months are hard on everyone.
And it's cold and they can't get out and go to the Hardee's like they do every morning at 7:00 to have breakfast with their buddies, because Hardee's is a really good place for seniors to go. They gather down at Hardee's here on 221.
Mom, how do you know that?
I know because I might have been in there a few times.
Okay.
So, but and I love to see seniors have their joints that they go to, right? They have their place, they have their special times.
I'm just curious. What's your go-to breakfast?
Well, Biscuitville probably right now.
Biscuitville.
Yeah, it's close to home.
You got a specific item
Yeah.
that you just
Well, it's yours too.
Well, yeah.
Country
I
ham
love a
double
good-
meat biscuit. There you go.
country ham. But throw an egg on there
Well,
too.
no, I just like ham.
Double ham with an egg. Good
So
stuff.
I think that when they get to where they have to be inside so much, and they're away from their family, they're away from their community, they're away and isolated, depression and anxiety can hit so hard.
Well, I wrote this down too under emotional signs. It's just, and you touched on it, it's just withdrawal.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
loneliness, withdrawal.
Mm-hmm. And you, as a son or a daughter, you just know that you're going to, when those diagnoses are handed down, it really is your responsibility. And I know I work too, and we have to make time for our parents at those moments. We have to make sure that if we can't get to them, to take them to lunch because they don't like to go out at dark because it gets too cold, or if it's raining, you might as well forget it altogether. They're not going to go anywhere that day. And I'm probably resonating a lot to a lot of people right now. So let's find
Or if
a
they
day.
don't like to drive after dark.
Don't like to drive after
I
dark.
know that's
but
a big deal.
it's a big deal. But if you can find a day in the week that it's going to be sunny, it's going to be over 32 degrees, which is not anytime soon here, and you can just take them up to one of their favorite places to eat, spend an hour or two with them. I promise you, moments like that will enable them to stay in their home a whole lot longer.
So, you recognize those signs. The
Mhm.
next step, once you choose to take the next step is having a conversation
Right.
with your loved one. And those sometimes are not the easiest conversations to have.
No, they're not, but there's a lot of people that are, and I think it's become such a popular thing now to talk about with parents. In the past, I've seen it transpire over the last 10 years to where it's now it's accepted to where we can sit down with mom and dad and say, when and if you need a place to go or you need care, how do you want me to handle that? And a lot of seniors, I will say these days, and I love to get clients in like this, I don't want my daughter and son to be so burdened and for it to all fall on them. So let's find a great place that your dad and I can get involved in bingo and cards and all the things, that great activities that go on in some of these independent living homes. And let's go ahead and search and see which one we would choose. And if you can get your mom or dad to do that before things get to be a crisis moment, then that's the best way to handle the idea of placement. Again, though, there are ways to keep these loved ones in their homes with great home health agencies. Physical therapy even comes into the homes now. Speech therapy will come into the homes. And if they won't come into the home, or you want your parents to go out and have therapy, there's some great therapy places in local communities that doesn't involve going into a big hospital anymore.
Well, I know even just starting the conversation on med management, because those can make such an impact.
And we can do that
especially
right at
early
home
on,
these days.
Keeping loved ones at home, but just having the conversation, hey, there may be some meds that would really help right now.
Right. And so there's pharmacies here in town that will bubble pack the medications per the doctor's instructions. And some pharmacies will deliver them right to your house. And I love that, because that is such a big reason why people used to have to come in to the facilities, because mom or dad just was not able to do med management at home, and it affected their cognitive abilities to make decisions. Because if you're not taking your medications correctly, that can really mess things up, not only philosophical and in your body, but in the mind. And so, especially if it's an antibiotic that needs to be given over a 2-week take time. If they miss those antibiotics and they've got a urinary tract infection or they have some or other sort of infection that starts to get out of control, then we really have to start trying to manage that.
It's so crucial that once they were to start, is that constantly check in. Did you take that today? I know we made some suggestions on those simple, Sunday through Saturday pill dispensers go a long ways.
Yeah, and you can start with that. But I love the idea of, I mean, here in town, I know Hill City Pharmacy. Great friends of ours will bubble pack your medications, bring them right to your door, and God bless them for doing that, because that is a huge way to stay at home longer before you have to come into a facility.
Talk a little bit about, because I know how much you deal with families, and we see this quite often. What are the best ways and how important to have the whole family support, and also some the ability to address these in a non-confrontational way?
Well, it is super important to have the whole family's support. And so if it's just two adult children that are in their 60s and we've got grandchildren, if we can assign those grandchildren to certain days, certain lunch times, or can you take them to the doctor today because I can't? Man, it just really does something for the psyche of that senior citizen to think that everybody in the family cares enough about me that they're going to take a certain portion of their time out every week and be with me. That's the first thing. We're going back to that connectability that I talked about. When we stop connecting with those seniors is when things will continue to go down, because they lose their purpose. They lose their drive. They lose the ability to feel anymore. And so we want to make sure as families that we're grouping a group of people around them that they love and adore. And there's nobody any better than grandchildren, number one. But I think you can do that. You just got to make time. It's important. And then you just want to make sure that you're going through with it and you're making sure that you're committed at that time, because when you miss, it really can make a problem at that time too.
And I was about to add on. I mean, you always know that there's certain family members in the family that those grandparents may respond better to.
That's right. And you talked about the ways to approach. I think when you sit down with them and they still have the ability to make their own decisions, and you say, "How would you like us to handle this?" Or, "I'm going to tell you a way that I feel like we can resolve this issue, but what would you like for me to do, Dad?"
Then it turns into their decision and not yours.
Right. And we want to allow them to make their own decisions as long as we possibly can, even if it's only choosing what blouse they wear for the day. They've made one decision on their own. And so the ability to make those decisions every day and not take that from them until you absolutely have to, then that's super important.
Once you have that conversation and you're on you get them on some meds and those kinds of things, what would be, and you still need help in the home?
Well,
what are the next steps?
Home health agencies are not going to provide daily care aides to come out to you. So you have to search for a bonded, licensed person. And say that again. A bonded, licensed CNA caregiver, a nursing assistant that has had basic training on transferring, and honestly, a registered med aid is the best, because if something happens with that medicine, they're able to jump in and say, "Hey, I'm calling you because I noticed that he didn't take his medicine right today." And so then you can get on the phone with the doctor. But it's up to you to find the right staff to go in the home. And then if you look and say, "This is just too expensive for me and I can't do it," then I would suggest that you start touring all the local senior citizens facilities in town, which there are some great ones. I'm always going to recommend Runkin Pratt first, but we have some great communities, and Runkin Pratt is not for everybody, and this show is not centered around just Runkin Pratt. I want to help all seniors. I want to give the education to the community that they need, and it may be too far from your home. You may have one right down the road that you can visit more often. I would suggest you do that, because visiting more often is important, especially in the first 90 days of adjustment. So when when I talk about going and finding a care center, you find what you feel best about. Look up and make sure they've got, good inspections. And I say that kind of loosely because we're always going to get caught for doing something wrong. That's their jobs. So make sure that it's not something that, is detrimental to the resident's care. If it's just something, simple like we didn't document something, then
A light bulb
was out. You can look over those kinds of things and take it all in perspective, because it is the job of these state inspectors to go in and make sure we're doing everything perfect. And we appreciate that. We are held to high standards. And so then you just want to make sure that wherever you're touring, that they have at least one nurse on duty. And I say a nurse, LPN level, on duty that can help with any kind of emergencies. If they have no nurses at all, just know that when I choose this facility, they're not going to have a nurse on duty, but they are going to have registered med aides. They're required to. They are going to have CNAs. They are going to have NAs, and they're going to be able to care for mom. Is that the last stop for you? Is that facility able to handle all the levels of care that mom will have? Because goodness, once you do that first admission, it is hard to move them around after that. So those are all things to really sit and consider. Do some do some research on the internet. A Place for Mom is a great resource. aplaceformom.com. And we use them. And they've already vetted a lot of these communities. They rank them.
That's actually a website. A Place for Mom is a website.
A Place for Mom. Joan London started that, and it started out of the need to place her mother. And now she has this wonderful business, and it's doing so much good all across the world. So go to aplaceformom.com. And, of course, you're always welcome to go to www.runkenpratt.com. Look at our Facebook pages. It shows you the real-time life experiences that those residents are having. These activities directors take pictures almost daily of everything we're doing, and they post daily. So go to our social media, go to the websites, look at the different levels of care, because they're all so different.
Mom, I know this journey for a lot of people is probably many years most of the time, of realizing, hey, somebody's starting to have some struggles. Let's get into some med management. Let's address some of these physical therapy needs. Normally takes a lot of times, if I know you can be met with some resistance. Mm-hmm. What's the best way of kind of handling that resistance from your loved one? Because sometimes that can be difficult. Is it best to just let it drop and readdress and just watch? What are you got some advice on that?
Yeah, I do. Again, I've done this personally myself with our family members through the years. So I'm not just talking about other people's families. I'm talking about myself. I never will forget, my grandmother and her resistance to being cared for in a care facility. And one of the things I love to tell families to do is go have a conversation in a doctor's office with that physician, and let that physician explain to your mom and dad why it is going to be better to have 24-hour care and what that's going to do for their own physical condition. Let them hear that from the physician themselves. And I've said this before on this show, and I cannot drive it home enough. It helps so much when everybody understands the majority of these facilities in town, or really anywhere in the United States, most of them, if it's not a continuing care community, only require a 30-day notice. So get out of your mind that you've got to go take pictures for the last time in the living room, because you don't. And when you try to put that kind of pressure on mom and dad, they feel like they've got to make a really quick decision based on a question that they don't have resolved in their mind. So if you can just take it month to month, just like an apartment, and understand, and even if you did have to give a 30-day notice and they really just do not like it, pay the 30-day notice and take them home if that's an option. So trying to make it seem like this is such a gruesome decision that has to happen for the rest of their lives, I think that takes a lot of pressure off of not only the resident themselves, but the family members, the daughter, the son, because you know that if it's not the right decision, if it's not the right match for you, you don't have to do it. You can just turn around and walk back out the door. That really releases a lot of the tension.
You talked about, being met with resistance. I also think it's really important, and I know you're really great at doing it, and there actually is an art to it, I believe. But allowing and setting up that senior to allow them to realize and believe that it's their decision.
That's right.
That I think makes all the
Well,
difference.
and sometimes with some of the clients I've worked with, I'll say, "Can we try this for 6 weeks?" And we'll start a calendar, and we mark out each day, and they know how many more weeks we've signed up for. 6 weeks, Mom. Let's try this for 6 weeks. Well, inevitably, by the third week, I'll go back and they'll say, I really like it here. I'm loving going to the art class. I made a friend down the hallway. The food is wonderful. By the time we get to that 6 weeks, did you want to sign up for 6 more? And it does become their decision, and there is an art.
Yeah, it's amazing. I've watched you do it throughout the years, and not just you, but other folks too. But I'm a little bit closer to you, and it is amazing to watch that switch happen, to realize that loved one, it's their decision. And
Nobody wants to be told what to do, especially at age 75.
There's an art to handling it.
That's right.
And you were very gifted at that, but it can be done, and I think that folks may want to do some research on how to do that, but
just not to put a finality on it. That's my key advice. Do not make anything final. Even if every time you go in, that cognitive space in their mind doesn't remember, and you have to say, "Oh, it's just 3 more weeks, Mom," and that goes by, and it's just 3 more weeks, Mom. You're not making it final for her. You have to give her a reason to work to get back home, if that's her goal. Now, not everybody wants to go back home. We have hundreds of people that are just as satisfied, and that's their home now. And families will tell me, "I can't even take her out to lunch because she wants to get back for the bingo game at 3:00, and I'm on a time frame. I can't get her back by 3:00, so I just have to leave her here." And that's fun because we know she's adjusted then. But if it is a problem of wanting to get back to her room in her home, make her work for it. Go to therapy every day. See the increase in mobility. See the decrease in anxiety and depression. And then when it's time to say, "Mom, do you really want to go back home?" She's so much better off where she is. Most of the time she's going to say she's going to want to stay where she's at.
Yeah, I know there's been so many times that, that loved one was a little bit belligerent or a little bit mean about not doing something, right? And you kind of take that hurts.
Yeah, it does.
As a daughter or a son, and I've gone back and I was like, well, the next day, sometimes as soon as the next day, they just have to think about it a little bit. You go back to that. I walk back in, and exactly what that loved one needed to do. Yesterday was a no. Next day after they thought about it, had some time, you'd spoken the right tone and the right language.
Right.
It's a yes.
That's right.
I'm like, what happened overnight?
They had time to process. And ultimately, we all want to do what's best for us. And sometimes when a senior is struggling physically, it's just a relief. It's like, the burden's been lifted, and they're in a place that's open 24/7. They can see staff in the hallway. They can have friends. They have something to look forward to the next day. They're not just getting up to an empty home with Fox News. They have connectability, and that is so important to keep our seniors connected. I received a call 2 days ago from a person in the community that I'd known for over 20 years, used to shop in her store. And she had left a message for me. She wanted to see if I wanted her to donate some of her husband's medical equipment. Another day went by because I couldn't get to her call. She left me another message, and I called her first thing this morning because her message was so sweet. She said, "Hey, I'm just calling to remind you I called you, and I want to talk to you about my husband's equipment. But more than anything, I just really thought I could talk to you." And boy, that got me. I thought, well, I'm going to get up first thing in the morning and make sure I call her. We had a sweet conversation. We had not seen each other for 20 years. She knew you kids when you were little. She wanted to know what you were doing now. And I could tell she was hungry for connectability and someone to just talk to her. Now, she's pushing 90 right now. But she said, maybe I can call you again sometime and we can just catch up. And I thought, how many 90-year-old women are sitting up there sitting out there in the community right now. She just lost her husband 2 months ago in this same situation. And at the end of the day, it's about connectability.
Well, Mom, we'll leave it right there on that cliffhanger. We're going to continue this conversation for next week's show. We have some more points we want to hit on, but I know you like to end every show with a quote. And if you got that ready, I will kick it over to you.
Yes, well, we've been talking about the new year and all of the things that we've done last year. And so I just wanted to leave everybody with a thought. A new year is a new chapter. It's a new verse. It's not just the same old story. Ultimately, we write it. The choice is ours. And that's so true. And even thinking about what we've just talked about with our parents, the choice is ours. How we look at this, how we interpret it. And I want to talk more about this in some of our next episodes. And I encourage you to write into VickieTalk.com and ask me some questions, and we can answer those on air. Until next time, I'm Vickie, and we're right here around the table.